Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Hey, John. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about, and not a whole bunch to talk about. Alex was helping us out with some hockey news before he was getting out of here. He's the resident hockey expert, but we'll talk about that in the final segment. I've actually made a note here. He was giving us all kinds of history tips and all that jazz.
I've enjoyed watching the hockey this year.
I've not watched a lick of it.
I have watched some of the playoffs. It's been interesting.
I don't know, I guess maybe when I was probably a teenager, I got into hockey for a little while. But, I mean, if you grow up in South Mississippi, I mean, you never know. You never see ice. So it's not like you ever think about people actually playing a sport on it and that kind of jazz.
True, but there's a lot of professional hockey teams in a lot of places, that there's no ice, whether it's at Arizona, California, Florida, North Carolina.
Well, it is. I mean, think about it. I think, mentioning Florida.
Nashville.
Yeah. I mean, it is a strange thing how it is over the last 25 years or so migrated so many teams to the
Texas.
South. Yeah. I remember when a team moved to Columbus, Ohio, I think it was, people were, maybe that was in the late 80s, early 90s,
right.
And folks are like, Columbus, Ohio, why would they have a hockey team there? You know what I mean? Initially, because it was all up in the frozen north, either Canada, New York, Massachusetts, all those kinds of places that you don't really think of. And I guess really the first one maybe was the L.A. Kings back in the 80s. They had a team and then stole Wayne Gretzky. So
that's correct.
It is a southern sport now. But you better have a place to go skate somewhere. I guess if you're going to learn how to play it if you're from the South. I wonder how many of the hockey players are actually from warm weather areas.
Probably almost none. A lot of Canadians, Russians,
Swedes,
Finland.
Yeah,
and I mean they're Americans on there too, but generally northeast.
Yeah. Anyway, it's. Well, like I said, we'll talk about the Stanley Cup in the final segment, but yeah, he did kind of trip me up when he started mentioning that, and I was like, huh. This first segment, I wanted to just have a general, I wrote down basketball conversation, because there are things, some of them are relative to local sports and that kind of stuff. A lot of them are not. I figured we'd talk about the Boston Celtics closing out the NBA title. Of course, they played that game last Monday that we talked about them playing game 5, I guess it was, Monday night. And I guess it's one of those things where the Celtics were actually as good as they looked during the regular season, but because of their recent failures probably in the postseason, we talked about that on here. We didn't really trust them to be as good as they looked. But also because during their run in the Eastern Conference tournament, the teams they played had injury issues. They were obviously just the best team in the East, but we believed that the teams out of the West would give them a fight, and maybe a different team other than Dallas could have. But the Celtics, I think, as much as anything, they were good offensively, but their tenaciousness on defense is the thing that I think was the clear difference. And I think the addition, it's not like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum couldn't play defense before, but the addition of Drew Holiday being this guy that's like, I will guard their best player and I will make them have a miserable day, seems to have been the thing that really transitioned just the general, attitude, effectiveness of the Celtics, and kind of gave them that moxie that I think they seemed to lack in their previous playoff runs.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, not the most inspiring of NBA playoffs, to be honest with you. I watched very little. And the championship was just it. The playoffs we talked about last week, it lost so much momentum with the gap in time between the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals. I mean, the momentum just completely stopped.
Right.
But you're right. Probably the biggest, probably the MVP of Boston was probably Brad Stevens.
Yes.
The GM who went out and got Holiday.
Yes.
They were missing a point guard. Mm-hmm. The point guard they had was a fan favorite in a lot of ways. He was drafted by Boston. Marcus Smart, but he wasn't great offensively, but he thought he was. He took too many shots, to be honest with you. And Holiday, who won at Milwaukee as the point guard, is pretty humble but tenacious defensively, and also score. Just a perfect player.
Yeah.
And the 7-footer that they got as well.
Kristaps Porzingis,
who they didn't really need in the finals, but he was. But you could tell when he did play before he got hurt again, he was a big-time difference maker. And Brad Stevens, the former coach there, who turned into the GM, went out and added those final two pieces that just put them over the top.
Yeah, and I think the most impressive thing I thought it was great that Brown got the MVP, because if you look at the first two games, I mean, that Porzingis played in, Porzingis' offense was critical, but Brown's defense, I thought, was outstanding there and throughout the year. And the thing is he's a guy that the joke was he couldn't dribble with his left hand. And he's a guy that's really, you could tell, worked on his game, gained that confidence, and I felt like played, especially against Dallas, with a different level of confidence than he had played with in the past.
It's hard to tell. I mean, I could care less who was MVP because, I mean, they won so easily.
Yeah.
I mean, they won in five games. They won 4, and they kind of took turns. You know, I thought overall Holiday was probably their better player, and whatever.
Yeah.
Even in the finals, Tatum had like 32 points and 12 rebounds, and several assists too. I mean, he didn't shoot it great throughout, but he was obviously really good. I mean, you're just like splitting hairs, and it's more of a media creation, I think, sometimes. Both Brown and Tatum are what they make, $50-55 million a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would have voted for Holiday, the point guard, just because I think he's the unsung player, the kind of the glue.
Yeah.
The last I checked, Holiday and Brown have been there the last couple of years, and they didn't win it.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden,
that's right.
They go from 50 wins to 60-something wins.
Yeah,
and they
65,
go, And they go, so what is it? I think it's Holiday.
I would absolutely hope that inside the Boston Celtics locker room and organization, they understand that it is Drew Holiday is actually the MVP of their team, no matter whether the media or whomever does the voting for the MVP for the finals knew it. And I would say that surely they do. I mean, because they had to feel that way. Some other things that we didn't really, last year during the basketball season, high school season, they made a couple of rule changes that we talked about some, but we didn't really get into, and I kind of wanted to be a little more technical in discussing this with you. The one being the 5 fouls, doing away with the 1-and-1, the 1-and-1 bonus, so to speak, of the fouls and free throws. And I was curious. You did some games during the season. I covered some games, obviously, during the season, and I was curious what impact you thought that change had on the games. Because some of the games, I saw some players still think that it was a 1-and-1, like they'd miss that first free throw and then go get the rebound, and they're like, no. So I was curious of what impact you thought that actually had on the high school basketball season.
I'm not sure. I mean, I call college women games for Western Kentucky, and they did away with that. That's a couple years ago. So it's no 1-on-1 and it's 5 fouls. But the difference is in the women's game they play 10-minute quarters. In varsity high school they play 8-minute quarters. I think there was less free throw shot, clearly.
Yeah.
There's definitely less free throw shot. Because it just sometimes it takes longer to get there. All in all, I like it. To be perfect, I like it. Though I still look back and remember the times where it's, from a fan's perspective, it's a little interesting to watch somebody have to step up and make the front end of the bonus to get the second one. There's a lot of pressure. I think there's a little less pressure when you have 2.
Yeah.
And but that's just. But I will say, at the pro level, there's no bonuses either.
Right.
When you get 2.
Yeah.
So it's college men. They still have the bonus for a couple shots in college men. I think on the 7, 8, 9, it's a bonus, and then 10 or more, it's not.
Right.
So I don't know if it had a huge impact or not. I do know administratively it's easier once you get to 5. Everybody, it's 2 shots.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about anything else. It did seem like to me in several of the games that I saw in high school and even called that teams had to foul a little bit more late just to get to the bonus.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Because in the past it was 7 for a half, not for a quarter. It's 7 for a half.
Right. Yeah, so it's 5 per quarter now.
Now it's 5 per quarter, and after each quarter you reset it. So sometimes you're trying to foul late just to get to that bonus. That's the only thing that I kind of saw. I thought since maybe it crossed my mind a couple of times since it's 8-minute quarters in high school, maybe the better solution would be 4 fouls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's 5 in college for 10 minutes in women, and it's 4. And I just thought maybe 4 for 8, maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. But all in all, I don't have a problem with that.
Well, and it seemed like the rule change, as has happened and very often does happen, was to try to
it speeds the game up too.
It speeds the game up, but also streamlines kind of whether you're playing AAU or you're playing high school or college. You're trying to streamline the rules so they're just more uniform.
Right.
And get people more, whether they're going to play in college or not is beside the point. It's to have them all be similar.
I do think it makes the game a little bit quicker. Nobody wants to go to a game and watch people shoot free throws.
Right. Yeah, I agree on that part. I thought it did make the games quicker. Also, the other thing, going back to what you said about the number of fouls to be committed, to me, it actually felt like there were fewer free throws being shot in the games because of...
There is, yeah.
Yeah, because of how it's structured now.
There's no question. Like I said, before that, it was 7 fouls per half.
Yeah.
So you could actually get 7 in the third quarter, and there'd be a free throw shot the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And now it's erased, and you go back to 5. I like that part. Whether or not they may want to adjust it to 4, doesn't matter to me, but I do like the fact that your foul, the team fouls are reset after each quarter. I do think it's a good move.
I do too, and because I can think of some games through the years where you get to the fourth quarter and basically you spend 8 minutes watching people shoot free throws.
That's correct.
And there's no real action happening on the floor, and I think with those circumstances, sometimes you might see coaching in a way that basically that's what they were aiming for, was how many, we have a chance to win the game by hitting free throws because we're a better free throw shooting team. So you got people getting fouled in situations, and they're not good free throw shooters. And this that can still happen, but it kind of negates it being a whole quarter's worth of that kind of craziness. And early in the season, I thought I saw some people kind of complaining because they thought there were more fouls being called and all that. But every game I went to, it felt like there were fewer fouls actually being called.
I think so.
Maybe how the game was being officiated changed a little bit.
Sometimes it's perception. There may be just as many fouls, but there's not as many free throws.
Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah. So
because of the resetting of the team fouls each quarter.
Yeah, and that probably was the case. Is it just because the game had more of a flow, it didn't feel like there was as many fouls?
Right. You just take the ball out rather than go to the line and shoot free throws.
Yeah. Now another one that is not a rule in the state of Kentucky, but I think I looked up. There are 22 states that have high school shot clocks. I don't know if they're probably using various different times on the shot clocks depending on the state itself. And I think there are 3 states this year that are going to test out shot clocks in certain circumstances. And, we talked about this on here before. You are in favor of a high school shot clock. You think it'll be beneficial for coaches, I guess.
I like to see it, yeah. But it's the biggest question is administratively, can we administrate a shot clock? That's the only thing in my mind. I mean, it's hard enough just to administrate a game clock. With a shot clock, you're adding another person that has to watch it, and then you have to judge whether or not it hits the rim or not, because if it hits the about resetting the clock and all that. So it gets into, they have issues at the college level on the resetting of the shot clock all the time.
Right.
And that would bring in another dimension, and I'm not for sure if enough high schools are qualified to do that. That's the biggest problem that I see.
So there are folks.
But I think it'd be good for the game.
Well, so there are folks. Josh Hurt being one of them, former girls basketball coach at Metcalfe County and now superintendent over there. He's been not in favor of the shot clock. He's been pretty vocal about that, written some stuff about it, and some of the stuff that he uses is like the number of points. The people make the idea that more points would be scored because you're forced to shoot and that kind of stuff. And the statistics, at least the ones that he's put out there, kind of negates that argument because very rarely, despite the push that people claim they see this all the time, very rarely do I go to a high school basketball game and see somebody run a stall.
No.
It just doesn't really happen.
No, it doesn't. I think the argument is the last 2 to 3 minutes of the game.
Yes.
That's when you start to see that.
Right.
And the shot clock takes that out of your hands. You have to play.
Right. So
which is what most people want to see.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, most people want to see action, not keep away.
Right. And so that part doesn't that part I probably am in favor of. But on the flip side, you believe that it would make coaches better coaches with a shot clock. Why is that?
Number one, it takes away some of those decisions about whether or not I should hold the ball or not. That instantly takes that away.
Right.
Because I can't tell you how many games have been lost by people trying to hold on to the league.
Yeah, some teams are not good at it.
By not trying to play.
Yes.
That takes that option out. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to try to score.
Right.
And so I think, number one, that's going to help coaches with that. Sometimes there are very tough calls late in the game where you don't know whether to play, to hold the ball, this or that. And when when there's a shot clock, I mean, you could still want to run some clock.
Yeah.
But it does kind of take that out. Now there's still coaching decisions to be made too. With the shot clock situation, you better have things in your arsenal too. Specifically screen rows and things like that, where when the clock is running down, whether or not it's 10 minutes left in the game or 35 seconds, that you have an ability to get a shot off too. So your players also have to be coached and practice and be aware in situations like that.
So I don't know. I mean, what do you think that a shot clock in high school forces more coaches to run motion offenses, or do you think is there a certain type of play that they would have to adjust to more readily?
No, I don't think it matters. But if you're going to run motion at the end of the shot clock, you better hope it's in the hands of the right person.
Well, there's that. I mean, so that also kind of sometimes you wind up with these seconds. Let's say it's these instances. Let's say it's a 35-second shot clock, and so you've got a good point guard. But so then you're just going to leave the ball in your point guard's hand, probably run screen and roll kind of actions just to get them a shot.
Probably so. And I don't think it's going to make. I don't think it make a lot of difference in terms of. I don't think it's going to make teams play any faster or slower. I just think it's more in the game situation. It actually may force teams to play more zone because sometimes against zone you need to be more patient. You work around, get the ball, more shots and things like that, and you only have so much time in a zone. Against the zone. So I just think from a fan's perspective more than anything else. I do think it speeds the game up a little bit. People want to see shots, and they don't want to see a lot of free throws, and I do think there is a benefit to it. I just don't think we can do it administratively, and I don't think it helps the bigger team or the smaller team or whatever. If you can't handle the ball, a shot clock or not, it's not going to help you.
True.
I mean, it's not going. Neither one's going to help you, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the things. Like one of my concerns about a shot clock in high school is when I've seen teams that can't handle the ball. They're struggling to handle the ball, and you're forcing them to actually play at a certain pace that they just can't do it. Mm-hmm. Then you're just maybe you're going to witness. I thought you might witness just more bad basketball. But you're right. If you have two teams like that, it's going to be bad anyway.
If you can't handle the ball, you need to get a shot up.
Right.
Because a bad shot's better than a turnover.
That's one of those things sometimes that does, I will say this, it does kill me in high school basketball sometimes, is they'll run a play and run a play and run a play, and they're not really getting anywhere with it. And I'm like, well, somebody's just got to take a shot.
Yep.
And you're right. The shot clock would basically mean that you're as you're coaching, you're training your players, you have this amount of time to run the play, and then at the end of it, you got to take a shot, no matter what. And so I do think it would help in that. And in recent years, I feel like I've seen more of that, especially if you have like just one good player, and then they're trying to run something, or maybe you just have a bunch of players who are almost identical to each other. You know, they all have basically the same skill set and that kind of thing. So I'm curious how that would affect, you know.
And, of course, you know, you determine, or the state would determine if A, they go to the shot clock, and B, you know, it's 30 seconds in college. You know, maybe that's too quick for high school kids.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you can set it whatever you want to, you know, if you want to set it at 35 or 40.
Yeah.
If you set it at 35 or 40, I don't think it makes any difference, hardly.
No, certainly not.
So, I mean, it means very little. It just prevents somebody with 2 minutes to go trying to hold it. Not that they could hold it very long anyway.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way about a stall in basketball very often as I do prevent defense in football.
Yeah, it generally backfires.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, again, if your team can't handle the ball very well and you're trying to run a stall, you're just asking to turn the ball over. You know, you're not going to stall your way to a win unless you've got an outstanding ball handler.
It's hard to. I mean, it's. I mean, occasionally you have seen it done. I mean, it happened against us once in around 2010 or 11. Allen County. It was just a regular season game, and they did have really good guards, and they from the tip. You know, they held the ball against us. I think they ended up beating us. It worked. That game, they beat us like 22-16.
Yeah.
And
this was Brad the head coach?
Yeah, he was.
I was thinking so,
22-16, and you know they got the win. But you know it was a good win. But I'm just thinking that's just. And of course, it hurt worse that we lost. But I just think, golly, I wouldn't want to be in the stands watching.
Did you expect the fans to go ask for their money back as they left the game?
Well, I mean, it was surprising because it was early in the year too. It was like it was one of those December games, and you know. But
I guess they were just working on the stall.
Well, I think they needed a win. You know, they were building up and trying to get to, and we weren't great at the time, but we were still pretty good, and. You know, they got the win, which may really help their confidence. But I'm just, you know, just like, and we weren't real. To be honest, we weren't prepared for it because it's like the fourth game of the year. You don't really prepare for somebody to hold it on you the whole game or anything like that.
You're not put in your man press yet.
Well, I mean, they had a speed, and that was when they had the rich girl, and you had some of those others on that team. They had I don't know what. Really, we could have done, to be honest with you,
right?
Because they had a ball handling advantage anyway.
Yeah.
So just one of those deals where it's you know they won, and it was one of the few times I can remember where just a stall for the whole game has actually worked all that much. To be honest with you, but it worked. But you know, I would have taken a shot clock at that time.
I bet you would. I bet you would have. That is, you know, a lot of times when people are complaining about another team playing the stall and the other team just not defending them, I mean, it does kind of take two to tango, and it would be surprising that early in the season. You just don't expect somebody to do that.
Right.
And, you know, if you go and if they have a good ball handler and they're determined to run the stall, it's going to be hard to get them out of it anyway, as you were mentioning with them having Rich and that kind of stuff there at that time. So That is kind of the catch-22 of that situation. And I think sometimes people don't realize a lot of times the team running the stall is running it because they know they have somebody who can beat you off the dribble and score. And so they're just daring you to come let them have that person, you know, not get free reign, but get open and you know, score like that. So it's not always the loser team that is running the stall. A lot of times a team running the stall actually has a ball handler. I put down some stuff down here about Victoria Vivian's going to Mississippi State as a assistant coach. Sam Purcell, who was with Walls at Louisville, is the head coach there. I think this will be his third season coming up. You didn't know who Victoria Vivian's was?
I did not remember her. No.
Yeah, she was recruited at Mississippi State when Vic Schaefer first came there, and Mississippi State became a good basketball program during his window of time there. So that was going on, and I had forgotten this. You know, last year Michelle Clark-Hurd was at Mississippi State as an assistant for Purcell, but she got hired in March as the head coach at Mercer. So former WKU and University of Cincinnati coach.
That's correct.
And one last thing, the Lakers hired J.J. Redick as the next coach. I'm sure he's do a fine job.
He could. I mean, I think he could be a fine coach. He's clearly knowledgeable, but I think
he's a smart basketball guy.
But I think the Lakers is a horrific job to take. I would. they go through coaches constantly. I wouldn't want to coach LeBron ever, because you have really very little say so, because he is if he likes you, that's good. If he doesn't, then you're in serious trouble. And there's probably never been a greater player than LeBron that has gone through more coaches.
Well, and another thing about the Lakers' job, like you mentioned, it is seemingly a horrible job because the front office situation is such a train wreck there at the moment.
And they've got one 40-year-old, and Anthony Davis is 32 maybe, but it looks like at times he's going on 40.
Yeah.
And I just don't see any path to them regain. I think it'd be forever till they're really, really good. They're going to be good, but not championship good.
Yeah.
And talking about having to draft LeBron's son somewhere, it just seems like a mess. He'd been better off going to Detroit or Charlotte, one of the worst franchise. At least they're young, and maybe he could implement some of the stuff he wants to. I would hate being the head coach of LeBron James.
Well, and you mentioned Detroit. I mean, they fired Monty Williams after paying him $35 million a year, basically bribing him to come take the job, then fired him.
Well, they didn't pay him $35 million.
Oh,
no.
Well, not a year.
No. He has $65 million left on his contract.
Yes.
He was the second highest paid coach in the league.
Yeah, going back to what I said about them bribing him to come take the job, basically they gave him so much money.
Gave him 1 year.
And then fired him. And
they owe him $65 million.
Yeah, and so J.J. Redick should have taken that job because at least it's a clean slate. You don't have to worry about anything, and they were so bad you can only go up, hopefully.
Right.
So, and Charlotte probably falls in that same category. So, anyway, I just thought, I don't know, after the flirtation with Dan Hurley on taking the job, and, it was had been out there that J.J. Redick might go take the job. So, anyway, it was just like one of those things where I'm like,
bad job. I mean,
yes, I feel badly for you.
If you need the money, I mean, he's going to get guaranteed money. That part's fine, but he could have got that. He had a good job
obviously
anyway.
From Detroit.
In Detroit, or Cleveland was open.
Yeah.
I think they just hired Kenny Atkinson today too. But I would never go to the Lakers with LeBron. Never.
All right, this has been the basketball segment of the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, this is kind of our gap week of sports. We have no high school sports really to talk about. The dead period starts, I guess technically it starts tomorrow, and will go on for a couple of weeks, and so we won't have any high school stuff. But during this dead period that we have here of high school sports, next week we're going to have Mark Woodcock on to talk about getting softball officials and that kind of stuff and some other things they have going on. And then the week after that, we're going to start our fall coverage because we're going to start having golf coaches come in and talk about their teams. So we
2024-25 season, right?
Yeah, we're only a couple of weeks away at this point.
Yeah.
In the meantime, though, speaking of golf, Abbie Lee won the 96 women's amateur.
A pretty big day for the Scotties, the Lady Scotties.
Yes,
had
it was.
An incredible weekend in terms of former Lady Scotty golfers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Abbie Lee won it. She beat Nina McMurtrey, her former teammate at Glasgow, by one stroke.
Yeah, Abbie Lee is a senior at Middle Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
And Nina McMurtrey, I think, transferred to Western,
Yep.
WKU, right? And she'll be a junior.
Yeah, she'll be a junior at Western.
And the State Am, it's big time.
Well, and I think Abbie Lee was the runner-up last year. I think she lost in the championship match, if I remember correctly, last year. And along that path of her winning it, she beat Taryn Walker, who used to be Taryn Durham.
That's correct, Dr. Durham's daughter, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then who returned to playing golf last year after a hiatus for several years.
Who also played at Middle.
Yes, that's right. And she won that amateur in 2005, Taryn did.
That's 19 years later. Comes back and gets beat in the semis. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, especially considering I think she took basically 7 years off of playing competitively and didn't. I think maybe the Kentucky Amateur was her second. Last year was her second tournament last year in her return to playing competitive golf.
Okay.
And then Nina McMurtrey had beat Mary Keene Mars in the quarterfinal, I think it was, and of course she's the daughter of Benji Mars from Glasgow. So, I mean, it was a whole bunch of people with Glasgow connections playing pretty well in the tournament.
And in the finals with Abbie Lee and Nina McMurtrey, it was one stroke.
Yes, that's right.
And, in fact, it came down to the last hole. In fact, I was reading, I think McMurtrey led most of the –
She did.
She was up like 3 up with 6 holes to go, something like that, right?
Yeah. And then I think she didn't – Abbie Lee got like 2 consecutive birdies to get within a stroke, and then she got another one that tied it up, and then she got a birdie on number 18. Beat her to get that one-stroke win.
She earned the comeback with birdies,
yes, she
right?
did. Yes, she did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Nina didn't have any bogeys across there. I mean, it was all pars. It's just that Abbie Lee just hit some awesome shots in second 9 holes. So yeah, good run for her. Of course, you know she her junior season at Middle Tennessee was disrupted. She had some medical issues that kind of hurt her spring run. So, you know, but she's supposed to be back full strength. And then Nina didn't play in any of the tournaments last year. She may be a redshirt sophomore this coming year. I don't know if she technically took a redshirt year or not. But she should be one of the key players, I think, for WKU this coming year as well. So, you know, they'll be playing each other in the Conference USA tournaments and that kind of stuff. Probably a good, you know, friendship kind of rivalry. Rivals can only compete against each other if they're equal levels, and they both are, obviously. So yeah, it was a good tournament run by both of them. They've both been playing really well lately. And then Scotty Scheffler won the Travelers Championship? Is that what that thing's called?
Yes, in Connecticut, yeah.
Yeah, so good bounce back for him. So
it's his 6th win this year.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable.
Yeah, outside of, you know, a couple of bumpy little runs in Louisville, I guess, it's been a good year for him.
You think?
Yeah.
6. Nobody else has got more than, I don't know if anybody's got 2.
Yeah.
He's got 6. Maybe somebody has 2. And the girl that was in the final, the LPGA had a major yesterday. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of the major. It was one of their 4 majors. And the girl in the final group was Laura Hartledge from E-Town.
That's right.
And she didn't win it, but she was in the top 5.
Yeah, she was like in second coming into the final day. I think she finished 4th. I think
something
it was.
Something like that. Yep.
Did she play at Louisville? I think she played at Louisville for.
I don't know if she played for Whitney or not, but I think she did play at U of L. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else golf related that you can think of?
No, I mean they've had good dry weather around here. I know a lot of the junior golf and things like that. It's been hot, but you know, this is the, you know, if you play golf around here, you're going to get hot weather. But they've had the weather to play around here.
Yeah,
that's the season for all that.
And the Bluegrass Golf Tour had a tournament today at Crosswinds over in Bowling Green, and the results, we'll have those online later. There were 4 or 5 local golfers competing in that as well. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we have Game 3 of the College Baseball World Series tonight. It's Tennessee and Texas A&M, and I don't guess anyone is surprised that Tennessee's there. They've been the number 1 team in the nation for most of the year, I believe it is. Maybe Texas A&M is a surprise, but I think they were number 3, I think, coming in.
Yeah, ain't no surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of chalk. We're going to see if the SEC can win it again this year, obviously.
Well, it was chalk getting into it. I mean, it's 4 ACC teams and 4 SEC teams, so you didn't have any. There's no Cinderellas. If you want to call UK a Cinderella because they've never been there, and the number 2 seed, it's kind of hard. That's a stretch, but you know, I mean, A&M and Tech and Tennessee. I mean, that's not surprising.
Yeah. Speaking of Kentucky, I mean, they
won their first game.
Yeah, and then they took that one on the chin from Florida. I think it was 15-4 that knocked them out of the World Series.
Yeah, they lost to Texas A&M the day before.
Yeah,
and a fairly close one.
Yeah,
and was never in it against Florida. I think Florida scored like 7 in the first 2 innings and just kind of knocked them out. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Texas A&M knocked Florida out, beating them 6-0. That's how we got with Tennessee and Texas A&M in the championship.
Yeah, and A&M had Tennessee on the ropes last night. They were up 1-0 going into the 7th, and Tennessee hit a 2-run homer to put them up 2-1, and then had two more. I think the next inning or later that inning 4-1. So I mean, they had them on the ropes.
Yeah, whenever I got done and decided I was going to get in the bed a little earlier last night, and it was 1-0. I think it was in the fifth inning, and Tennessee was not doing anything at the plate at that point. And I was like, well, Texas A&M, especially since they had won the first game 9-5, I expected some runs to be scored at some point in time.
Wind was blowing in hard.
Yeah,
and plus both pitchers were really pitching well.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing about the College World Series every year in Omaha is that the weather is always a factor. The way it works out, whether the rain storms that delay games or just the general, I guess.
It's a big park, and there's a lot of wind. You know, it just depends on where it's blowing. Sometimes it blows in, sometimes it blows out.
Yeah. It's interesting that the weather during a game of baseball would be a factor, not canceling it, but just the wind itself. So, anyway, what do you think? You think Tennessee's going to pull it out, or how do you think this is going to go?
I don't have no clue. I mean, neither one would surprise me. I mean, Tennessee's has been there 2 out of the last 3 years, I think, something like that, and they probably have a little bit more star power. Their second baseman, their coach is more of a vocal and things like that, and the relief pitcher that comes in, the left-hander that has the Fu Manchu. Texas A&M has that really good left-handed hitter. Mm-hmm. That's a sophomore. And they have Jeff Kent's son, who's a former major league player, who's a really good player too. I have no idea. I think it'd be close. It almost seems like Tennessee's due because they were the number 1 seed a couple years ago and kind of flamed out early. Maybe they little much due, but we'll see. Yeah,
I was looking. The number 1 seed has not won the World Series the last 6, I think, or 7 World Series.
Yeah, like 1 out of the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean it's not been good if you're to be the number 1 team coming into this thing. There's been several upsets.
Yeah, but there was just very little separation between 1 through 8. So it's just a number this year. I don't think it makes any difference.
Right. And then in the major leagues, the Reds are kind of floundering around at the moment at 36-41. We're almost at the halfway point.
Yeah, they lost. They either got – I can't remember. I know they lost their last 2 against Boston at home, the Red Sox. Yeah, I mean, they're floundering. Their hitting is abysmal. They're hitting like .230 as a team.
Wow.
Part of it's injuries. They really missed the McLean kid a lot, and they missed their third baseman who should be back pretty soon. He was suspended for 80-something games for, I think, steroids or something like that. That may help. Their pitching has been good, but they've got no momentum at all. I mean, there's the league. It seems like there's like 5 dominant teams. I mean, the gaps between these teams and everybody else. It's the Philadelphia looks like to me the best team in the game.
Right.
They got hitting. They got 3 solid pitchers. The Braves are good, though the Braves lost their all-star center fielder, who was the MVP of the league last year. Mm-hmm. He tore his ACL for the second time. They lost Strider, arguably their best pitcher, Tommy John. So they've got 2 big injuries. The Dodgers have got injuries. Mookie Betts broke his hand.
Yeah.
They've had pitching injuries too. But they're still, 25 games over 500. I mean, they'll win 100 games. The Yankees have got some injuries, but they're on a big-time pace. And Baltimore is the other one. That's those 5 have kind of separated from everybody else in the league. A lot of teams under 500. You never know, though. Texas is starting to play better. Mm-hmm. Seattle has good pitching. They're leading that division. Milwaukee's still over 500. St. Louis just made it over 500. But it does seem like there is a big 5 and then those others right there. But there's a lot of teams that are hopelessly out of it.
Well, and it's kind of fascinating. When I was looking down, like the division that the Reds are in, I think 3 of those teams are under 500. The Brewers are over, and I don't remember, there was one maybe.
St. Louis.
2
over.
Yeah, that's right. And I was looking at that division, but as I was looking at the records, it kind of dawned on me there are several teams. I mean, a hot week could save several of these teams. When I say save, I mean they could get close to 500. They're not like 8 and whatever.
You just got to get into the tournament or the playoffs.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, Arizona proved that last year.
Yeah.
They snuck in and got all the way to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, that's been kind of the run in Major League Baseball in recent years.
You just got to get there. And because baseball is so streaky, and, when you're playing, these small series or whatever, anybody can beat anybody, but you got to get there.
Yeah. Well, and as you mentioned, I mean, the injury situation, when you look at a team may have a good record all season long, but you get close to those playoffs, a couple of key injuries, they make it in the playoffs. You're like, oh, they won 101 games or whatever, or 98 games, but then they get there and they're not able to really compete like they were. It is the Major League Baseball, I guess, just because of the length of the season makes it such a curious thing.
Yeah, 162 games in 5 months. That's correct.
Yeah. So it's always kind of one of those things where when you look at the records halfway, I don't know. You mentioned there are 5 teams, but I'm not sure you're ever certain any team is just that good when you get to the playoffs. I mean, we just have not seen that in recent years.
Yeah, it's because baseball is so, when you go from playing 162 games, is a long, long, long year, each game's not that important.
Yeah.
But then in a playoff situation, like the first round comes best out of 3. You would never think about that's not a big deal to lose 2 games in the middle of the year, but in the playoffs, that can sink you.
Yeah.
So sometimes it comes down to hot pitching or hot hitting or matchups and so forth like that, and it's the hardest game in the world to predict.
Yeah. I had to make a note real quick.
Okay.
So
I didn't know what to do on the air. It was dead air, and I didn't know where he was going with that.
Well, it struck me that I was like, I better make this note right now.
Okay. All right.
I'll not remember it when we get to the next segment. I pull back the curtain and reveal how it is that I think. Right.
You tricked me.
Yeah. You were staring at me. You're like, where are you going? All right. This is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back to cover that note I just made.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
When I was making my note, I was writing down Dalvin Smith's name because I don't think we've talked about this on the show, but he's been on 2 preseason first-team All-Conference USA teams, one being Phil Steele's preseason and the other one being the Athlon Sports. So, I mean, it's 2 of the bigger ones name-wise. I mean, pretty impressive, I thought.
Well, he's his last 2 years in particular have been fabulous, and the big deal, he's been healthy.
Yeah,
exactly. He's had more. He had some major leg issues in high school.
Mm-hmm. And then first year at WKU
first
as well,
year at
I think.
WKU, and he has persevered and has hung in there. And I mean, we've always, if you watched him play football or basketball at Glasgow, you knew he's just an elite athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of found that niche in that hybrid kind of tight end /
slot receiver
/ whatever. And he's a touchdown maker. When he catches, it's usually for a touchdown. Right. And I'm just wondering if his role will expand even more rather than he'll probably be, I'm guessing, on the field more.
Yeah.
He makes his catches worth it. Maybe he'll have more catches and so forth. The big question at WKU is who's going to throw him the ball.
Well, and because, Caden Veldkamp, who was going to transfer and then played in the bowl game, and they needed him because
he looked like a star.
Yeah, he did. And so he's decided to come back. I mean, I hope that translates into something great.
Yeah, but he is facing competition. They still took another D1 transfer in, too.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. You're right. That is the big question. It seems to be the big question every year at WKU is who's actually going to be the quarterback.
Right.
But he and Veldkamp seem to connect well playing together in that bowl game. So, they obviously had a connection coming into the game, and it panned out in that game. So, good luck to him. It's just great. I think it's great that he's getting the preseason accolades. And, I'll look forward to the season. I hope everything goes well for him, health-wise and everything. Because you're right. I mean, when it comes to being an athlete, there's few better than him as an athlete. And he's played real well, especially in those high-profile games the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And they open up with Alabama, too, this year.
Yeah, so maybe he can catch a couple of games and say, no, Roll Tide.
Yep. That's right.
We were talking about the Stanley Cup at the open of the show because Alex was in here. He's a Washington Capitals fan. but he was pointing out to us that there's only one team that has come back from 3-0 down in the history of the NHL Stanley Cup to win, and that was the Maple Leafs in 1942, which was that was a few years ago, John.
Yes.
Just a couple. But we have a chance to see that tonight.
We do. I mean, Florida took a 3-0 lead and really just kind of, especially the first two games, kind of blitzed Edmonton. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say this. I think I'm right. If I'm not, Steve Mesker will text me and let me know. He's the hockey expert that I know of. He loves the national team.
Yeah.
I think Edmonton trailed in almost all their playoffs.
Yes.
They were down against Dallas, I think, 3-1, and they came back and won.
Correct, yes.
And they've been down most of it. But Carolina looked like Florida looked like a cinch to win this.
Mm-hmm.
Not only were they up 3-0, but they had knocked off some really good teams on their way to getting to the finals. They looked like at one time the best team, and when they lost when Edmonton won that first game to make it 3-1, Edmonton had just blitzed them. It's like 7-2 or 8-2.
Yeah.
And I like watching playoff hockey. Now, I don't watch all of them, but I watched all of these in the finals. I just the intensity of playoff hockey, and I think the TV does a really good job too. I mean, I can keep up with it, and they do a really good job of showing things and breaking things down. It's still hard sometimes to follow the puck on TV, but they do a good job, I think, of the coverage. And obviously, it's one thing that the momentum has shifted. Obviously, when it goes from 3-0 to 3-3, it's shifted. Mm-hmm. But it's the way, in my opinion, that Edmonton is borderline dominating these games. It's not like they've been going down to the last second in a lot of these. Yeah. It's kind of it just appears to be right now that the goaltender for Florida has kind of lost his mojo. To be honest with you, he was, he's given up. Now, it's not always the goaltender's fault, but giving up 3, 4, 5 goals, and some of these are at the end when they pull the goaltender and so forth. But would it surprise me that Edmonton goes in to win? No, because it doesn't look like in the playoffs there's a lot of home court advantage in hockey for whatever reason.
Right.
So it would not surprise me at all that Edmonton, who's got the best player, Connor McDavid is arguably the top 3 players in the league, wouldn't be surprised if they go in and win it all, and that would obviously be shocking. It's never happened in the NBA,
right?
Where a team down 3-0 in the finals, the other team has come back. It's happened once in hockey. We could be seeing a second time.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating storyline, and to be honest with you, I write the sports report that Todd reads on the air. I write it every night, and he reads it the next morning. And the other day, I was like, all right, I got to have a couple of more things to put in here. And I was like, the Stanley Cup should be over with, right? Because I knew, I saw the first couple in Dallas and killed them, and I quit paying attention to it, to be honest with you. And I looked, and it was 3-3. And I was like, what the heck happened? So then I had to go look and see, because I just knew that it should have been over with, because it should have been. So I wasn't even paying attention to it. So it really kind of caught my eye whenever that happened. Per the conversation at the beginning of the show, a few people were around for that. I guess I'm going to pay attention to this tonight because it's the most exciting thing going on, probably. I don't know. Then the College World Series are both pretty interesting.
Yeah, they're both going head to head tonight against each other.
Yeah,
yeah, and you between that and the NBA and Caitlin Clark's odyssey that continues on.
Right.
I mean, that's the one that's gotten the most publicity right now.
Yeah. And then, during our basketball discussion at the top of the show, we did not mention that the NBA draft is coming up. I believe it's Wednesday night. And I don't know who's going to be the number 1 overall pick, because a lot of people think it'll be Reed Sheppard and a lot of people don't.
Well, I mean, half the draft right now are people that didn't play in college.
Yes.
I mean, it's projected one of the French guys will be number 1.
Yeah.
I don't think Reed Sheppard's going to be 1.
No.
I have already all the way up to 2, which would be Detroit. Which
that would be tragic. I hate that for him.
I don't want him to see Detroit, Washington, or Charlotte have been just morbid franchises.
Yeah,
just morbid. But it's hard for me, and I watched Reed Sheppard play at Barron County High School 2 years ago.
Yeah,
and I was very impressed with his ball handling and all that stuff. But to go from there to being a top 5 pick in the draft I couldn't. I didn't imagine that. I thought he'd be a 3 or 4 year player at Kentucky.
Yeah,
and have a good career. Mm-hmm. I never imagined this. But he of all the, at the draft combine, at the NBA combine, he had the highest vertical, like a 44-inch vertical.
Yeah.
Which his athleticism, I think, has surprised people. But his ability to knock down threes and ability to pass is, if he gets on a good team,
yeah,
I'd love to see him at San Antonio.
Well, there's been some speculation that San Antonio would like to have him.
I would love to see if he gets in the right situation. He could really, really. I don't know if he'd be an NBA star, but I think he can be a winner. I think he can really, really help a team win if you put the right group around him and so forth.
There was a comparison to the Pritchard guy at Boston, just in terms of playing style.
He's better,
but he's a better athlete than
much
that.
Better. He's a better athlete,
and probably he's definitely a better ball handler. I mean, the one thing in college that the only real knock on him was his defensive ability.
On the ball, not off the ball.
Yes,
off the ball, he's fabulous.
Yeah,
steals, block shots, and so forth.
Yeah, because they were in their final game, the game in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I mean, they were hunting him on defense, trying to get him.
It's one of his worst games.
Yeah, and so some people looked at that, but in the NBA, that defense is kind of if you can score enough, the defense is irrelevant.
Yeah.
If you can be a guy that can not just be in the corner but run off pick and rolls and hit those shots, which he can do. Obviously, at Kentucky, he played against high competition, so
he's
he
more
can
than
do
a shooter. No, he's. He won't go past 8. I don't think.
Yeah. Now, I think it was like Zach Lowe. I think it was on ESPN. He was talking about he's a guy that San Antonio's interested in.
Yeah,
and
they have 2 of the top 8 picks.
Yeah, and so they're in a good position, and that would be a great place for him.
It would be, and of course you have the other Kentucky player, Dillingham.
Yeah,
he'll be a lottery pick, probably.
Yeah.
He's fallen a little bit because. At the combine, instead of being 6'3", he's 6'1". 6'1",
right.
About 150, 160. But he can score.
Yeah.
I mean, he can flat out score, so he'll be somewhere, And then you obviously got the what I'm interested in is where Shepherd's going. Mm-hmm. But the big kid from Purdue.
Yes.
Zach Edey. Who's going to take that chance? How far does he fall? Mm-hmm. And so forth.
Yeah, because we saw a bit of a resurgence in big men, even in the NBA this year, in terms of the impact they could have. But
more as shot blockers and rim runners,
yes,
not as low post threats.
Yeah, and
he's not much of a shot blocker.
No, he's not, and he's more of a deterrent than anything, but maybe not in the NBA.
No, he's more of a 1970s or 80s low post player.
Yeah, so it'd be curious. Because there's been some, I thought maybe there was some transition back to some more low post action. I think going back to the NBA, one of the things I did see more of this year was people shooting mid-range jumpers and that kind of stuff. That seem to be coming back. And so
the 2 teams in the finals did not use any low post players.
Well, no.
None. Boston's 5 out.
Yeah, I mean.
And the only low post players that Dallas used were rim runners off screen rows. That's it.
Well, I mean, that is true. And the 2 teams that we had low post players didn't make it out of the Western Conference. So,
right.
So, anyway, it'll be good. I'm curious to see where Shepherd winds up. Hope he doesn't go to Detroit. That'd be disastrous for him. Do they even have a coach yet? I mean, they just got $65 million hanging around, right?
I don't think they do.
Right. So even worse, go to a team that doesn't have a coach. Yes, that would be great. No. I don't think that would be great at all. So, and as you mentioned, unlike the NFL draft, the NBA draft has a whole bunch of people we've never heard of because they didn't play in college. We didn't get to see them play. We've never seen them play. And there's no Wembanyama's this year.
And if you did, for only 1 year.
Yep. All right. It's a Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.